Сейчас я приглашаю на сцену Марвина Ляо. Когда он был последний раз на этой сцене, Марвин рассказывал нам про... Дайте презентацию, пожалуйста. Марвин рассказывал нам про...
Yeah, we're good.
Hopefully. Yeah, but let me finish my
Sure.
presentation of you in Russian. Рассказывал нам про свою жизнь и карьеру в YaC. Теперь Марвин является партнером в очень известной компании 500 Startups. И поэтому просил его рассказать о том, как устроено вообще вот не в медицинской теме, которой мы коснулись, а наоборот, в более, наверное, близкой всем нам теме Adtech, маркетинговых и рекламных технологий, стартапная жизнь во всем мире. Ибо Марвин, он вообще летает по всему миру и знает гораздо больше, чем просто американскую картинку. I'm telling that you know the global picture, not just US, not Silicon Valley picture. This is important. I believe you will tell us that there are serious differences between what happens in, say, Asia and California. So, please.
Thank you. All right. Dobro utro. That's about all the Russian I got. Sorry. Okay, so let's jump into it. I was actually asked to speak about some global ad tech trends. But before I get started, I'm American, I like to talk about myself. So who am I? Why am I qualified to sort of speak about what I speak about? I've actually been in the ad tech and Martech world for a long time. I was executive at Yahoo for 10.5 years, rolling out ad products and selling ads all across the world. I also bought ads in my previous life before Yahoo. Now, my job is actually as an investor. I'm an investor at an early stage venture capital fund called 500 Startups. We've been around for about 7 years. We invest only in the seed stage. And we also have a fairly well-known accelerator, which I also run. We've made about 1,800 investments. And so one of the benefits of actually doing what I do is my job is actually look at the future and to invest in the future. And so I think that's part of the reason I was asked to sort of come back. And by the way, to the Yandex team and Andre, thank you very much. This is the third time I've been on stage at YaC, so I'm really, really greatly honored to be here. And so, let's jump into it, right? A lot of people are buying technology in a solution in search of a problem kind of scenario. So that's what's happening actually on the ad buying side, right? The ad technology buying side. On the other side, from the builder side, the ad technology companies, Martech companies, as an industry, we've overbuilt and over-engineered the marketing technology stack, right? Done by a guy who runs the platforms at MediaVest, one of the biggest agency groups in the world. And this is why the ad tech world is such a bloody mess, right? And so like every single ad tech presentation, you gotta show the LumaScape. Every year, this thing gets worse and worse and worse and worse, more complicated, more players. And it's becoming very challenging for publishers to keep track of what's going on. It's becoming very, very challenging for advertisers to see what's happening. And that's part of the reason that you're seeing the Martech and the ad tech world come together, right? So on the ad tech side, this is usually publisher-driven, agency-driven, and on the Martech world, this tends to be CRM systems. And what's happening, and this is my thesis, is that the overall sort of like ad stack and software stack, when you actually control all the customer data, you want it to talk directly to the ad server. And so over time, these two worlds are coming together, and you're starting to see these big ad stacks, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. Other big driver that's actually happening in this world. There's no more VC money. You saw this huge spike in 2011. This is actually the main reason the LumaScape in the ad tech world is such a mess. There was a big dump of actually VC money, and over time, this money is actually left. So a lot of companies that actually probably should not have ever been funded actually got funded. So that's part of the reason you see the LumaScape in every single sector. There's like 10, 20 companies. And what happens when you have massive competition? Prices go down, and they aren't able to invest in the technology and the business. And also what you see that's interesting over the last couple of years, you're seeing investment actually go up in the Martech world. And so as these sort of worlds sort of collide, you're seeing this actually, you're seeing these worlds sort of like come together. Programmatic. What is programmatic? Hopefully you know what it is, but it's basically instead of humans actually buying ads and running the process, it's actually machines doing this. And why is this important? So I'll give you some examples. In many parts of the more advanced sort of like digital world, so for example, UK, Nordic region, US, you're seeing most of the digital ad spend, 40%, 40 to 50% of actually ad spend is being done but through programmatic. In less advanced countries, it's about 3, 4, 5%. So you're seeing, but over time, these low percentage sort of like programmatic is actually going to go up. And actually my hypothesis and my view is that all ads, whether online or offline, in the future are going to become programmatic. Why is this happening? It's happening because this is all about the data, right? And we talked about like the importance of data for better targeting, for actually targeting your users. And if you look at a lot of the consolidation, a lot of the acquisitions I talked about, a lot of them have actually been around sort of buying sort of like data plays. And I think this is also one of the reasons why this is driving sort of like future consolidation, because think about who actually has the most data, the best first-party data in the world right now, right? Facebook, Google, Amazon. In Russia, it's like Yandex. When you actually have all this data on the users, you can actually target better. And this is actually one of the reasons, for example, globally, when you look at how much money, let's say for every $100 that actually the publishing world is actually taking in, Google and Facebook take $80 of that. Think about that, right? Two players dominate this industry from the amount of money that they actually suck in. Amazon is actually growing very, very quickly. Amazon is mainly making money from e-commerce, but because think about the data they have from e-commerce, and they're starting to turn on the engine for ads. And this is the reason it's actually driving a lot of the consolidation, right? I listed a bunch of trends of Martech and Adtech coming together, and I think one of the main reasons too, so I'll give you an example. When you see sort of like, there's no venture capital money, so you have a lot of players out there, a lot of technology, actually still decent technology. Then on top of that, you have a bunch of publishers that are getting squeezed. And so you need to sort of see some level of consolidation, right? So, and also the Martech world and Adtech world coming together. And so, for example, if you look at many, many acquisitions over the last 2 or 3 years, it's actually been, Oracle has actually made a crap ton of investments. I think their last company, Moat, was acquired, run by a friend of mine, was actually acquired for $900 million. They also bought Blue Kai. Then you saw Salesforce.com has spent billions on a lot of ad tech companies as they bring these worlds together. Same thing with Verizon. Verizon is a very, very big telco in the US, and they went to go and acquire AOL as well as Yahoo and combine them together. And the new name they call is Oath, which is really stupid anyways. But anyways, the new name of this company is called Oath. And the reason they brought them together is to basically fight against, to consolidate, to combat Facebook and combat actually Google. The other thing that's actually happening is the Chinese. The Chinese are coming. Many of the big acquisitions in this space have actually been from the big Chinese players, right? And why is this happening? Number one, a lot of these Chinese companies actually see the need to actually leave their home markets. They're trying to establish a global footprint. They're sitting on a lot of capital and cash. And the third part is they actually need the technology. One of the things that I think, one of the benefits of actually being overfunded in VC is there's a lot of great technology that was invested in that may not have been able to find a product, sort of product to market fit, or may not have been able to find customers. And so that's one of the reasons, if you look at, I think, most recent AppLovin, MediaNet, I think most of these acquisitions have actually been over $500 million. So these are, this is actually a big forcing trend of sort of what's happening. And so, if you think about all these things coming together, I'm going to sort of prognosticate a little bit about what I think are actually important things that are going to be happening in the ad tech space over the next 5 years. And this is just my perspective and my view, right? Because it's sort of my job to think about this. Number one, I think you're going to see the rise of a lot more publisher-driven ad tech. If you look at Lumascape earlier, majority of that technology has actually been built looking at the demand side, right? For advertisers, for marketers, and all those trends I mentioned to you, where a lot of the publishers now, outside of Facebook and Google, are actually being squeezed margin-wise. And so there's actually a major need for them to survive. How do you survive is actually using technology to monetize, manage your user base better. And I think you're going to see, I'm starting to see And I think you're going to see as well too a rise of many, many new like ad tech companies, but mainly focus on helping publishers monetize their sort of offerings a little bit better. The other part, and I'm biased here, so full disclosure, I sit on the board of this company called Avocado. One of the benefits of actually first-party data and all the data that you actually have is allows better targeting. So that's a good thing, right? Like better targeting is always good. And also the programmatic is also very, very good, right? The automation. The problem is from a creative optimization, you have two sides, right? One side is how do you make your ads perform better? You basically target people better, right? And so that's what's happening with the first-party data. The targeting is actually getting much better. The issue is on the creative side, there's no way, right now, most of the creative is actually manually optimized. And frankly speaking, people aren't very good. You can't operate as well as actually machines. And so dynamic creative optimization, I think, even though I've been talking about this for the last couple of years, I actually think now is actually the right time that dynamic creative optimization is actually going to come into the fore. And partly because of sort of the seat that I actually sit at, I actually see the growth of actually dynamic creative will actually skyrocket over the next 2 or 3 years. The unfortunate part is most people don't like ads. And so I think you are going to see an increase, and the trends point to the fact that there's going to be a lot more people using ad blockers, partly because people hate advertising. I think partly because the targeting is not so good, maybe partly because the creative is not so good. I think until that is fixed, you're going to see the rise of ad blockers. And I believe, if I recall correctly, I think Yandex's browser is actually integrated Ad Blocker Plus. And it's the same thing is happening. You see ad blockers now being integrated actually into the new browsers. And so expect this to rise. And among the young people, which many of you are, I bet you many of you are actually using ad blocker. I would not be surprised. Voice. This is one area I am very, very, very excited about. I personally think this is going to be the precursor to what we call like ambient computing, right? First you had basically the PC, then you had the mobile phone, which we all have, right? But the reality is from a UX perspective, voice is actually much more of a natural sort of like, in my view, UX and sort of like interaction. And what you should know about like Amazon sort of Echo, they've sold 10 million of these things right now. And you're like, okay, well, so what? Big deal. It's a big deal because think about it. If I want to order stuff where I go, hey, I'm looking for a men's hand lotion, like this is actually could potentially become a very interesting ad platform where if I'm some men's hand lotion company, I could potentially pay for placement, right? So if I'm ordering through Amazon Echo this product directly, this is one way that I'm actually going to be able to actually put my product ahead of my competitors. Just kind of like what Yandex and what Google actually did with search words, right? And intermediating a lot of, sort of disintermediating the consumer and sort of like the end store. I actually think this actually has a very interesting opportunity to disintermediate a lot of players. And this is actually part of the reason you see so much money actually being put, you have Cortana from Microsoft. You have Google basically trying to make their own play called Google Home, right? You see like Siri, which sucks. But you see like all these different sort of products and a lot of companies, Samsung, like every major tech company is actually investing in the voice platform. And there's a reason for that, right? Because we think this is going to be what search did. We think voice is going to be the next huge platform beyond mobile. Rise of podcasts. In 2012, 5 years ago, Apple actually talked about the fact that they had already 1 billion subscribers on their podcast platform, right? I believe now it's probably about 1.5 billion. And so you've seen this like rise of actually podcasts. And what is interesting about this is that, for example, in the US, you're seeing 57% of the population in the US listens to at least one podcast once a month. And this is a new radio. And so I actually think this trend is going to continue. You see the growth of new and more and better shows in specific areas. I actually think this is a new radio that's actually uniquely qualified, for the mobile world. Why is this important for ad tech? Is because you're also going to see the rise of audio ads between Spotify and these music services, as well as like the rise of these podcasts. You're going to see better integrated audio advertising into and potentially programmatic advertising into these areas, right? Why is podcasting so interesting? Because it's better than radio. It's very specific niche content that attracts specific people. So as an advertiser, you can target better than almost any other radio station or any type of radio product. Changes in media buying, right? Everyone knows I have like a lot of biases against ad agencies, maybe due to the fact that I used to get, due to my past experience. And so I actually think with all these major changes that are going on, this should not be a surprise. I'm not bullish on the world of sort of traditional ad agencies. They're not structured for the future because they cannot keep up with the trends, they cannot hire talent, and they cannot keep talent. If you're a really sharp ad salesperson, really sharp marketer, you're not gonna work at an ad agency. That's the truth, right? Because they don't pay well enough. You're gonna join a startup, you're gonna join one of the big publishers. And I actually think this is one of the main reasons. You're gonna see the dissolution of a lot of these agency groups over the next 5 years. And I think the other part that's actually happening is that if you look at many of the e-commerce companies and many of the very digitally advertising savvy companies, and these tend to be e-commerce companies, there are many of them, a lot of them are actually developing their own expertise, digital ad expertise in-house. Because it's cheaper. Instead of paying an agency fees, you're gonna basically go and hire your own people and develop that expertise internally. Just my opinion, And so, of course, like any tech conference, you have to talk about the rise of AI, right? AI, machine learning. And so, think about like any major job, whether you're a lawyer, you're in the marketing world, there are a lot of aspects of your job that, frankly speaking, computers and software is just gonna be able to do much better. And marketing, the marketing world, the ad world, is no different, right? You've seen that in the programmatic world, and that is only gonna continue. And the same thing with machine learning. Like, this is a big theme earlier, for the last like hour and a half. Like AI machine learning is going to really affect this industry as a whole. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, I actually think that if you are a marketer now and you are not testing a lot of the new technology and utilizing the new technology, you're going to be behind. And so last of all, right, computers can't do it all. There's no substitute for creative, clever, compassionate human marketers. And I think this is really true, right? And so the good news is, if you are one of like the 20% of like the best marketers out there, which there are only 20%, you're probably fine. You're gonna learn the technology, you're gonna learn how to use machine learning, you're gonna learn how to work with AI, just like in chess, right? Where chess versus sort of machine, actually, man versus a machine in chess, what has happened is actually man has lost, right? Lost many times. But there's a new art now where it's like man plus machine competing against man plus machine. And I actually think this is going to be the precursor for the future for every single industry, whether it's in digital health, whether this is actually in marketing. And so overall, I am incredibly bullish and very optimistic about where we're going. I think it's going to be a little bit rocky as we make these changes and this technology seeps in and people are not able to keep up. But I think in the long run, in 5 years from now, I think you're going to see better advertising. And because you have better advertising, I think you're going to see more successful companies. And I also think you're going to see more happier consumers. And this ultimately is a good thing. So anyways, I hope this is interesting for you. Thank you very much for your time. Questions?
Thank you so much. But please don't leave the stage. Прежде всего, ребят, можете не стесняться задавать вопросы на русском. Я переведу для Марвина, потому что я боюсь, что, может, кто-то считает, что надо сразу на английском. Совершенно не обязательно. Meanwhile, we do have already a good question from online. Anna Dubovik asks you, because you have to estimate potential of different startups. Actually, how can you do that? Because if it's just an improvement, then she says it's easy to calculate the result. If it's something totally new, there is no way to predict the final result. How do you handle that?
Yeah, it's really hard. It's just bloody hard. This is why, like, the reality is that it's the lifestyle of an investor is pretty easy, but it's really hard to be a good investor. And so what we do is we bet a lot on people and markets, right? Like, do we think that this could be potentially a big market? And do we think that this is a team that is like smart, passionate enough about the problem that they're just going to grind it out for the next 7 to 10 years and figure it out.
But do you somehow use, your gut feeling, or it's just hard numbers?
There's no hard numbers. For my stage, a lot of times they sort of have a working product. Like there's a couple customers, not a lot of customers. So I would say it's probably still 70% on the team and a lot of it's gut, right? And I'm wrong. Like, we're in a business where if you're really good, you're wrong 9 times out of 10 if you're really good. I'm not sure I'm that good yet.
That's a nice statement. Quantitative statement. Yeah. Okay, one more question from online, then we have questions and we go to the floor. Nice question. To you as a customer, how are you going, as a consumer, how are you going to consume in 5 years? What will be different in your consuming, asks Елизавета Засухина.
I actually think, I actually just ordered an Amazon Echo. I actually think in the future, you're just going to, say something to your house, like, hey, I'm out of toilet paper, and it's going to show up in your house right away. That's my hypothesis, and I think that's the world we're moving into.
Okay, we have more questions online, but we also have...
Live.
Ребят, микрофончик вон туда, там у нас...
Добрый день. Вы рассказали, что Facebook и Google контролируют 80% рынка интерактивной рекламы. Является ли это угрозой для рынка и нужно ли это каким-то образом, по вашему мнению, регулировать? Спасибо.
Boris Amelnitsky, the chairman of Russian IAB, actually, chapter, asks, you said that 80% of market are controlled by Google plus Facebook.
On the publishing world.
Yes. Do you see a danger in that?
Oh, yes. Totally scary, right? The reality is that any oligopoly is dangerous for the market. Having said that, I would say having said that, out of the players, both Google and Facebook, the competition between themselves and other players is actually, they are actually still pushing very, very hard from an innovation perspective. And I think what's very, very unique about both Google and Facebook is that they're actually run by founder CEOs. And so they're actually not worried about cannibalizing their own business. So that's part of the reason they've made acquisitions like Instagram, right? Because of the photos, the threat to their photos business. Why they've actually acquired WhatsApp. And so in some ways, I'm worried for the long run. In the short run, I think they're still driven. They're still pushing very, very hard on the innovation side. But yes, oligopolies are never a good thing. You always, for the consumer, you always want more competition. But having said that, any big oligopoly in the long run, they end up screwing up really, really badly. And so in the short run, I think it's going to be hard. Long run, I think something's going to kill them. That's the law.
Please, just a short answer to really good question.
Sure.
If VCs are data-driven people, then how soon they will be replaced by AI?
Great question. I actually think most VCs suck. That's the truth. And maybe I'm one of them. The reality is that most VCs, if you look at what's happened with the angel list, there's a whole bunch of really interesting companies like Palo Alto Science who are actually integrating a lot of technology into what they're doing. So, AngelList I think is a game changer. And so the really crappy VCs, 80% of them are all going to die out.
Slava Smirnov, я надеюсь, ответ устраивает. Now we have one more question from the floor.
Андрей, спасибо. Николай Новоселов. Вопрос следующий. А куда уйдут работать люди из фондов и люди из рекламы? Какие у них будут профессии?
So where will these people from the funds or from advertising world go when they are replaced by AI?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the problem that all societies in the world actually have to face over the next 10 or 20 years, right? It's not just marketers, lawyers, and that's part of the reason I think if you read a lot about what's happening in Silicon Valley, many of us are very, very interested in universal basic income. I think in the long run, there's going to be a transitional state, right? So what do these people do? How do they survive? I think it has to be something like universal basic income while they retool, right? But I think it's going to be really scary for the next like 5 to 10 years while we make this transition. I am worried about it.
Over there.
Hello, thank you for your presentation. And please, what do you think about big data psychological marketing and companies like Cambridge Analytica?
Yeah, that's scary stuff, right? When you can actually use a lot of data to tip, like elections and why we have an idiot as a president right now, right? So it is scary. Big data, but like Esther said before, right? Data and information at the end of the day is like neutral. It's how it's being used. So it is a scary world, right? Where we're moving into the world of big data, of IoT, where like everything is taking sensors everywhere. You're going to be able to find out things about people that you would not have been able to find out years ago. It is a scary world, right? And that's part of the reason it's very, very important for the tech world to work very closely with the government to figure out what these privacy laws and to find out what is allowable, what isn't allowable. But it is a scary new world that we're actually entering into. And that scares me a lot.
Okay, one more from the floor, then we switch back
Hello,
to
Marvin.
live.
Thank you for the report. It was really interesting. I tried to ask my question in English. We saw that the ad blocking stock became bigger and bigger and bigger. And I have the following question, and it's interesting for me your opinion. So, what do you think about the following trend that all digital ads became transformed in recommendation? What do you think about that? Thanks in advance.
So I actually think it's interesting, where if you look at what's happening with like content marketing, for example, right? Like really good content marketing, you can't tell that's an ad because it's actually useful for the end user. I actually hope that we are entering the world where advertising is not just better targeted, you have better creative, but it actually you're doing it for the right reason, right? And I actually think that having proper filters and having sort of like ads that actually, not even ads that are ads, but ads that actually add value to your life. That's what sort of really good content marketing is, right? So I actually think that's hopefully is the world that we're going into. I doubt it, because unfortunately we have a lot of bad actors in the marketing world. But I think that there's a possibility for that to happen.
Okay, thank you. One more question from a worried marketeer. Lada Safarova asks, given the trends you have defined, what will be the marketer of the future? What they will be doing?
I think the marketer of the future, my view is that they're going to be incredibly savvy. So if you look at what marketing is in Silicon Valley right now, it's actually not the marketing department, it's actually what we call the growth department, right? And so these people have some marketing background, but they're actually very analytical. They actually are very comfortable with technology. They know how to use MySQL so they can actually pull queries from databases, and they have a good, keen understanding of product. And so I actually think like marketers of the future are people who are very comfortable with technology. Marketers of the future are people who actually really understand new sort of like platforms, like growing platforms. So for example, right, like Instagram. If you're an e-commerce marketer and you are not doing stuff on like Instagram, whether it's through content or some, as Instagram is launching ads in sort of that platform, like you're probably not a very good marketer. And so really understanding what are the fast rising sort of platforms, whether it's like Snapchat or like, or maybe even voice. A good marketer is someone who's going to understand a lot of like the new platform trends. It's also someone who actually really understands technology and how to utilize it and is comfortable with like SQL.
One more question about future marketing. We recently saw a lot of examples of aggressive advertising. We know websites which prevent people from entering if these people use ad blockers. Also, there was a case when Burger King hacked voice assistant, bet you know. So do you think that this aggression will increase in the future?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the last desperate gasp of a lot of ad agencies and marketers to try to reverse what is actually I would say a trend that you just can't fight. Because all this is going to do is actually piss off users. And think about what's happening with the internet right now, right? The internet is about infinite choice. And so if you have these publishers or these sites actually doing this, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, there's lots of other news sources I can actually go to. Why would I actually go to this publisher? And so I actually think it's a very stupid move on behalf of sort of marketers and publishers that allow this. And I think they're going to suffer for this.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We
Thank you very much.